200 miles, make it quick. Whatever the amount was, great, cool. I get there.
Sundown towns is a name that gives a chill down your spine across the United States. These are places where the unspoken but very real rule was clear: if you are black, don't let the sun set on you here. Today's video dives into the history of sundown towns and their lingering impact till today. Be warned, this episode contains racism, violence, and other sensitive subjects. What are sundown towns, and how did they come to be? What are sundown towns?
J.B.R. McGee would still be alive if there weren't sundown towns still alive.
After the Civil War ended and slavery was abolished, many black Americans began moving across the United States, seeking better opportunities and a chance to build new lives. A significant number stayed in the South, but their lives remained far from free. After Reconstruction ended, Southern states implemented Jim Crow laws, a set of racist regulations that closely mirrored the oppression of slavery. These laws stripped black people of their rights, forbidding them from voting, attending schools with white children, or using public spaces like restaurants and parks. These laws legally controlled black citizens, forcing many into a system of indentured servitude. To make matters worse, former Confederate soldiers often held positions of power as police officers or judges, making it nearly impossible for black people to fight back or win court cases. Between 1890 and the 1930s, racial relations in America worsened dramatically, not just in the South but in the North, East, and West. Despite this, many black families joined the Great Migration, a massive movement of millions of African Americans seeking better opportunities in northern and western states. However, by the 1930s, the landscape had shifted. Black families were systematically pushed out of many areas. Some communities, known as sundown towns, made it explicitly clear that black people were not welcome. These towns used methods such as posting signs at city limits with messages like "Don't let the sun go down on you here," or "Whites only after dark." Housing covenants also played a major role in keeping neighborhoods segregated. Legal documents in places like Chevy Chase, Maryland, explicitly barred black people and individuals of certain ethnicities, including Jews and Italians, from buying or renting property. Businesses that served or employed black people were often boycotted, and postcards from these towns proudly declared their racial exclusion with messages like, "A good place to live, no Negroes." The exclusion wasn't just about laws and signs. Violence and intimidation were widespread. Black people passing through sundown towns were frequently harassed, arrested, or even beaten. In some cases, the hostility escalated to lynchings, as seen in Marion, Indiana, in 1930, where 2 black teenagers were killed by a mob, prompting the town's black population to leave permanently. Sundown towns were not confined to rural or southern areas. States like Illinois had over 150 sundown towns, and these communities often tried to erase evidence of their racist policies from historical records. Yet, the available evidence paints a horrifying picture of systemic exclusion. At the same time, schools often misrepresented history, teaching distorted narratives that glorified white supremacy and downplayed the realities of Reconstruction. The story doesn't end there. Many of these communities, like Cullman, Alabama, are believed to maintain some of these exclusionary practices even today. Cullman, Alabama.
Actually, yes, there are. There's actually a full-blown website that you can use to locate them so you see.
In Cullman, Alabama, there was a dark chapter in its history as a sundown town. Some accounts mention signs that read things like, "N-word, don't let the sun go down on your head in this town," while others varied the wording but carried the same ominous message. The internet is filled with such chilling stories. One person recalled a welcome sign that came with a warning, "Welcome to Cullman, N-word, don't let the sun set behind your back." Another claimed there was a massive billboard at the city limit stating, "N-word, don't let the sun set on your butt in this town," complete with a picture of a Klansman and a burning cross, allegedly still displayed as late as 1989. Charles Tisdale, a publisher in Mississippi, wrote in 2000 about a sign that supposedly urged, N-word, read and run. If you can't read, just run. One person recalled that the drugstore, a stop for Greyhound buses, had no facilities for black travelers. They would have to wait until they reached a town further down the road, with mothers explaining to their children why they couldn't use the restroom. The legacy of Cullman still lingers today. A district judge noted that black individuals are hesitant to go to court there due to its notorious reputation. Arab, Alabama, which is part of Cullman County, seems eager to forget its past. Their town website celebrates its history while glossing over the uncomfortable truths, framing the land's history as a peaceful transition rather than acknowledging the violence and discrimination faced by Native Americans and black residents. Alabama's reputation for racism is well documented, but the legacy of sundown towns offers a critical lens through which to understand the ongoing impact of this history today. Vienna, Illinois.
To investigate what he believes was a, quote, lynch mob of white people who chased down the 25-year-old father and murdered him.
In Vienna, Illinois, some white residents insist that race isn't an issue and never really has been. However, for black residents, the reality feels quite different. In a 2020 article from the Columbia Daily Tribune, a biracial 17-year-old named Victoria Vaughn, who frequently visits her white grandparents in Vienna, share her experience. Every time you come into town or go to a gas station or a store, people look at you. She described feeling their stares but noted, I've never had anyone say anything racist to me in Vienna, but I've definitely sensed how they feel about me. The racial history of Vienna dates back to 1954, when a 31-year-old black man named Thomas Lee Latham was arrested, accused of violently assaulting an elderly white woman. After he escaped from jail a few weeks later, a mob of armed men retaliated by burning down the black community in Vienna. The 1950 census recorded 54 black residents in the town, but by 2000, that number had dwindled to just 1. Sundown towns today. It's sad to see that many small towns seem unwilling to learn from their painful histories. Just because there are no longer openly racist laws doesn't mean that racism has gone away. This issue isn't just in the South. Sundown towns exist in the Midwest, West, and North too. Many sundown towns would destroy any signs that showed their status, leaving little official record of their existence. This shows how people often try to erase the uncomfortable parts of our history.
In my mind, the black people live somewhere else. I thought it was that way everywhere.
People of color.
One study suggests that people living in these towns often don't understand their history. They might think that the division between black and white communities is natural. In places like Kenilworth, Illinois, some locals say the town is too expensive for black families, explaining why there are so few black households. However, there are actually 7,000 black households making more money than the average family in Kenilworth. The idea that black people aren't rich enough doesn't hold up, yet many still believe it, ignoring the fact that many don't feel welcome in these towns.
And it just shocks me that in 2024, I'm still being told that there are certain towns that
Sundown towns aren't just relics of the past. While the notorious signs and open threats have largely disappeared, the exclusion they enforced lives on in more subtle but equally harmful ways. Even without the blatant warnings, the legacy of segregation is impossible to miss. Take towns like Pierce City, Missouri, or Harrison, Arkansas, for example. Both have over 95% white populations, despite being in states with sizable black communities. That's not by accident. It's the result of historical and ongoing exclusion. Policies like zoning laws and strict rental rules are often used to keep diversity out, disguised as efforts to preserve community character. In some cases, the police play a role in enforcing this unwelcome environment, disproportionately targeting minorities with stops, questioning, or arrests. The message is loud and clear: you don't belong here. Towns like Vidor, Texas, stand out as striking examples. Once a Ku Klux Klan stronghold, it remains predominantly white. Black visitors and residents report hostility and unease, despite claims from some locals that the town has moved on. But the lack of diversity and ongoing stories of racism suggest otherwise. Harrison, Arkansas, faces similar struggles. It's still associated with hate groups, and visitors often describe feeling unwelcome or uneasy. The town's demographics reflect a history of exclusion that continues to shape its reputation today. Stories from those who've experienced this firsthand are powerful reminders. One black traveler shared how, while passing through a small Mississippi town, the stairs made them feel like a spectacle. "I didn't stick around to see what might happen," they said. Another person tried to rent an apartment in a small Oregon town, only to be told it was suddenly unavailable. The same apartment was offered to their white friend who called the next day. Stories like these are common and show how much work remains to be done. These modern echoes of sundown towns remind us that racism in America isn't just history. It's still shaping where people feel safe or unsafe. It's not just about where someone can live. It's about feeling welcome, valued, and secure. The effects go far beyond physical spaces, leaving emotional and generational scars. Acknowledging this history is an important step in understanding how deeply racism has shaped communities and lives. Ignoring the uncomfortable truths won't make them go away, but learning about them can help us build a better future. It's not easy to confront such heavy topics, but change starts with small actions. Start by educating yourself about the history of your own town or region. Speak up when you see exclusion or discrimination. Together, we can shape a future where everyone feels safe, valued, and welcome. If this video made you think, don't stop here. Share it to spread awareness, leave a comment to keep the conversation going, and follow us for more untold truths. Let's confront the past to build a better future together.